So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining today's lecture organized by the Center for Asian and Middle Eastern Studies. I'm your host, Dr. Ali Ahmed Shraib, and tonight we have our first lecture in a series of 7 parts, which will be delivered by our very own Professor Recep Şentürk. And the whole title of today's talk is Applied Multiplexity, Ibn Khaldun as an example. The aim of the series is to understand Ibn Khaldun's multiplex approach to social science. Now, before we start, let me introduce a brief introduction to CAIMS, which stands for Center for Asian and Middle Eastern Studies. This CAIMS is a non-partisan organization based in London, promoting activities to understand Asia and the Middle East better, and acts as a hub for engaging with other regions' arts, cultures, and politics. We engage through research and dialogue to facilitate a better understanding of these regions from socio-economic and political viewpoints. Recently, we've undertaken several lecture series on terrorism, colonialism, Ottoman Empire, and civilizational studies, and the influence of modernity on the Islamic. And tonight we are to have the 8th lecture series. This is our 8th lecture series. So the title of tonight's lecture, as I mentioned, is Ibn Khaldun, Pioneer, or is he an alternative to a pioneer? Now, the lecture will be delivered, followed by a question and answer session. So the lecture will be delivered by Professor Recep Şentürk. He needs very little introduction, but he is very modest, so I have to say a few words about him when it comes to who he is and his background. Professor Recep Şentürk is the Dean of the College of Islamic Studies at the Hamad bin Khalifa University in Qatar. He was former founding president of Ibn Khaldun University in Istanbul between 2017 and 21. Professor Şentürk holds a PhD from Columbia University's Department of Sociology and specializes in civilizational studies, sociology, and Islamic studies with a focus on social networks, human rights, and modernization in the Muslim world. He served as a researcher at the Center for Islamic Studies in Istanbul and as founding director of the Alliance of Civilizations Institute. He is head of the International Ibn Khaldun Society and has a seat on the editorial boards of multiple academic journals. Among his books are in English, A Narrative of Social Structure, Hadith Transmission Network from 610 to 1505, and in Turkish, Open Civilization Towards a Multi-Civilizational Society and World, and Ibn Khaldun, Contemporary Readings. He also has written on Malcolm X, Struggle for Human Rights, and Social Memory. And his other work include Hadith Transmission Networks, as mentioned. Most of Professor Şentürk's work has been translated to Arabic, Japanese, and Spanish. So that's our short introduction to our guest lecturer today. As mentioned earlier on, the lecture will take around 30 to 45 minutes. It will be followed by a question and answer section, which another 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the appetite of our participants. Some ground rules, folks. We'll ask you all to keep your mic and mobile on silent. I've done it already on mine. We encourage questions and answers and discussions, but please maintain a professional approach. And we also ask you to keep some notes, make some notes during the lecture and during the comments and answer session. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Professor Recep Şentürk to deliver his lecture, today's lecture on Ibn Khaldun, Pioneer or Alternative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali, and salam alaikum, everyone. Tonight, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Radiyallahu anna wa ankum wa an kafatil mu'minin. Today is a very sad day for us because of the tragic earthquake that took place in Turkey, in the southeast part of Turkey. But as a principle, in these kind of circumstances, I keep doing whatever good thing I planned before, because I believe that this is better for us to keep our spirits high and connected, rather than sitting somewhere in a sad mood. So that's why I did not cancel this lecture, which is planned long ago. And inshallah ta'ala will continue doing our work, which is very important for the sustainability, for the continuity of our religion, our science, our civilization, our culture, inshallah ta'ala. So we have, this is my third series of lectures organized by Keynes. I first talked about open civilization in 7 lectures, and then I talked about decolonizing social sciences in another 7 lectures, and I introduced the idea of multiplexity, multiple levels of existence, multiple levels of knowledge, multiple levels of methods, and this new series of 7 lectures on Ibn Khaldun will be an extension of what I have been trying to present, because in this series of 7 lectures, I will present Ibn Khaldun as an example of multiplex scholar, a prominent scholar who is respected in the West and in the East by Muslims and non-Muslims, by scholars from diverse disciplines, how he applied multiplexity in his Ilm Umran, in his works, because until now, in my previous lectures, we talked about multiplexity, but we have not talked about how it could be applied. Now I will make this series of talks about application of multiplexity by Ibn Khaldun in his works. So this series of lectures will demonstrate that multiplexity is not something abstract. It is implemented by our scholars. So Ibn Khaldun is just an example. There are many other scholars. Actually, every Muslim scholar uses multiplex paradigm, multiplex approach in his works. This is the distinctive quality, this is the distinctive identity of a Muslim thinker, of a Muslim scholar, even any Muslim individual. Like every Muslim individual believes in al-alamin, the worlds, in alam al-ghayb, alam al-shahada. Every Muslim individual must accept wahi and reason as source of knowledge. But of course, I mean, ordinary people, they are not interested in the philosophy behind it. But all our scholars, they accept multiplexity and they implement it. And modernization is a change, is a shift from this multiplex worldview to a uniplex worldview. That's why I chose a classical example who is respected by Muslims and non-Muslims, and I will demonstrate how Ibn Khaldun implemented and embodied multiplexity in his thought and writings. Actually, I will argue that without taking multiplexity into account, you can never, ever properly understand Ibn Khaldun. Your understanding will eventually be a misreading, a misinterpretation, and misunderstanding of Ibn Khaldun. without taking multiplexity into account. In my view, multiplexity is a key to proper understanding of Islamic thought, Islamic civilization, and also the philosophy of Muslim thinkers. Without using this key, you cannot properly understand Muslim scholars. And here I will offer a new reading of Ibn Khaldun from multiplex perspective and demonstrate that this is the proper way of understanding Ibn Khaldun. And as I say, this is an example, this perspective must be used when you study, when you try to understand the thought of other Muslim scholars, whether Ibn Sina or Farabi or Mawardi or Ghazali, anybody from our history. And but multiplexity, especially the applied multiplexity, is not only to help us understand the history of Islam, but also help us to rebuild it, to revive it. So any attempt to revive Islamic thought must take into account this multiplex perspective and must build everything on this multiplex paradigm. Otherwise, it would be doomed to failure, and it would be ruthless. Applying multiplexity and reviving it is the only way to decolonize our social sciences, and multiplexity is the only way to gain intellectual independence from the hegemony of the materialist worldview. So these are the reasons why multiplexity is very important. Like, first, proper understanding of Islamic thought and civilization, and proper understanding of the works of Muslim thinkers from the past, and also an alternative to the existing hegemonic materialist or idealist perspectives in social sciences, humanities, and philosophy. And also, it's the way to gain our intellectual independence, decolonize our social sciences, philosophy, and humanities. So these are the reasons why multiplexity is very, very important. And inshallah, by using the example of Ibn Khaldun, I will demonstrate why we should reapply multiplexity in our works. So I thank Usul Academy, Istanbul Circle, and KAMES, for helping me for facilitating this opportunity of sharing my views on Ibn Khaldun. So let me start with a brief biographic information about Ibn Khaldun's life. For those who are not familiar with him, Abdurrahman ibn Muhammad ibn Khaldun al-Hadrami. Al-Hadrami shows that he originally came from Yemen. So he is known as Ibn Khaldun. So this is actually his grandfather's name. So his father's name is Muhammad, but his grandfather's name. But people sometimes are known by their grandfather's name. So he's known as Ibn Khaldun. He was born in Tunis, and the place where he is born is known today. He memorized the Quran by heart, learned grammar, fiqh, hadith, kalam, rhetoric, philology, and poetry when he was a child. He continued his studies until the age of 19, and he also studied philosophy on his own. So he was an encyclopedic scholar following the culture of his time. He served at many public offices in many different countries, throughout his life, including Morocco, Spain, and Egypt of today. He was a philosopher, historian, social scientist, faqih, and a Sufi, and he made his living as consultant to rulers, and also at the end of his life, he served in Cairo as Maliki judge, and his grave is in Cairo. In the Muqaddimah of Kitab al-Ibar, so he initiated a science of human society, which he called Ilm al-Umran. So these are the major books of Ibn Khaldun. The most famous one, Kitab al-Ibar wa Diwan al-Mubtada wal-Khabar fi Ayyam al-Arab wal-Ajam wal-Barbar. So the translation is that the book of lessons, record of beginnings and events in the history of Arabs and the Berbers and their powerful contemporaries. So Kitab al-Ibar has like multi volumes, but the book as a whole did not draw much attention. The introduction of the book, which is called the Muqaddimah, and Muqaddimah, as you know, means introduction. This is the part that drew a lot of attention, and Muqaddimah is usually published separately from the book. Very few people, care and buy the whole book, but majority of the people, they buy the Muqaddimah and read it. And it's also translated to English, French, and almost all languages in the world. So another book he authored, Lubab al-Muhassal fi Usul al-Din. So this is the resume of the compendium on the fundamentals of religion. This is a summary of Fakhreddin al-Razi's book titled Compendium of the Sciences of the Ancients and the Moderns. So this book shows that Ibn Khaldun was a follower of Fakhreddin al-Razi, and Fakhreddin al-Razi is from Persia, from Central Asia. And Fakhreddin Razi is a well-known Ash'ari scholar. So this shows that Ibn Khaldun belonged to the Maliki school in fiqh and Ash'ari school in kalam. So this is the tradition he followed. And also he was a Sufi in Tasawwuf. He wrote Shifa al-Sa'il li-Tasib al-Masail, the healing of the secrets. So this is also, this book is translated to English. Those who are interested, they can find it. And there is autobiography of Ibn Khaldun. It is titled At-Ta'rif Ibn Khaldun wa Rihlatihi Gharban wa Sharqan. So introducing Ibn Khaldun and his travels east and west. As I said, this is Ibn Khaldun's autobiography, and he lists there his teachers and the subjects he studied with them. He has other books also on logic, on poetry, on arithmetic, on philosophy, so in diverse disciplines. So who is Ibn Khaldun? Why is he important? And what's the proper way of understanding him? So Orientalists in the West and also their followers in the Muslim world, they discuss whether Ibn Khaldun is a pre-modern thinker or a modern thinker. So some of them say that he is a pre-modern thinker who belongs to the Middle Ages. And some others, they say, no, he is a modern thinker. He belongs to modern school of thought, and he's the pioneer and the founder of modern social sciences. But both of these ideas, in my view, are not doing justice to Ibn Khaldun, because those who say that Ibn Khaldun is a pre-modern thinker, belongs to the Middle Ages, they historicize Ibn Khaldun, they museumize Ibn Khaldun as if he's an historical figure. So he was a great in his time, but he has nothing to say to us today. That's the conclusion of it. And those who say Ibn Khaldun was a pioneer of modern social sciences, which is widely accepted among Orientalists, as I will demonstrate shortly. This is again same approach to Ibn Khaldun, because he was pioneer. So it is, time is over. Now we have social sciences who followed his inspirations, and they did better job. So let's say horse cart is the pioneer of the modern car, but nobody uses horse cart today. So saying pioneer means he was good in his time, but people came later, they took the torch from his hands and moved forward. So he is surpassed. And now we have better and more developed, more sophisticated versions of it. So he's no longer relevant. So both those who historicize Ibn Khaldun and claim that he belongs to pre-modern world, and those who claim that he's the pioneer of modern social sciences, eventually they are saying that today he has no usage. He's no longer applicable. You know, once he was a great man, but these are bygone times. You know, today we have nothing to learn from Ibn Khaldun. His stories cannot help us today. So this claim that he was the pioneer of modern social sciences is very common among the Orientalists. For instance, Erwin Rosenthal says that Ibn Khaldun was an exceptional man and writer and cannot easily be fitted into the medieval order of things. Okay, so he's not. Okay, and Barnes and Becker, they say that Ibn Khaldun produced the most strangely modern sounding theories that one could imagine. Franz Rosenthal wrote that many ideas discussed in the European West long after Ibn Khaldun's time were found, amazingly enough, not to be as new as had been taught, but to have been known in their rudiments, at least, to the Northwest African of the 14th century, who founded a new science in his Muqaddimah. And Erwin Rosenthal again argues that his thought should be considered a precursor to the modern worldview and modern scientific inquiry. As such, he reaches out from his Islamic root and environment. So Islamic root and environment for them is something constraining and limiting, but he's reaching out. Muhammad Talbi, he's another Orientalist, but these people, you know, they carry Muslim names, but they adopt the view of the Orientalist. So having a Muslim name does not mean, you know, one cannot be Orientalist, because Orientalism is a paradigm. Orientalism is a perspective. So whoever uses this, he should be called Orientalist. So not only like white Americans or Europeans are Orientalist, anybody who adopts the Orientalistic perspective, should be called Orientalist, regardless of the race and the country where he lives. So Muhammad Talvi argues that Ibn Khaldun was a solitary genius who does not belong to any definite current of Arabo-Muslim thought. So he's exceptional, and he cannot be considered part of the Islamic intellectual tradition or thought. And De Boer says Ibn Khaldun had neither predecessors nor successors in the whole history of Islamic civilization. So he is the lonely star in the sky. So he just emerged without predecessors or successors. But when you read Ibn Khaldun's biography, At-Ta'rif Ibn Khaldun, he tells you about his teachers, from whom he inherited knowledge. And also we know he belongs to the Ash'ari school of thought and Maliki school of thought. So how come he has no predecessors? And Brunswick says that he had no forerunners among Arabic writers. So he had no successor or emulators in this idiom until the contemporary period. Sometimes when people say something like this, I tell them, did you make a research about Muslim scholars before Ibn Khaldun? Have you ever read their works and made a comparison? Also, have you ever read the views of scholars who came afterwards? So without knowing anything about the scholars before Ibn Khaldun or after Ibn Khaldun, about Ash'ari school of thought or Maliki school of law, and the teachers mentioned by Ibn Khaldun in his At-Ta'rif Ibn Khaldun, they pass such a judgment based on preconceived notions. And actually, he had lots of successors, in particular Ottomans. There was a Ottoman Khaldunism, and many people in the Ottoman Empire followed him. They translated in 18th century his Muqaddimah and published as one of the first books in the Ottoman print house. So Stephen Frederick Dale argues that Ibn Khaldun could be either the last Greek or the first analyst historian. So that means, he cannot be a Muslim, either Greek or analyst, the French historical school, but not an Arab or Muslim, because an Arab cannot be that smart. A Muslim cannot be that smart from the perspective of Stephen Frederick Dale. So Ignaz Goldziher argued that a unique phenomenon unprecedented in Islamic civilization. Ibn Khaldun anticipated the modern approach of anthropological historical research and deserves as such to be called the founder of sociology. So again, an exception and pioneer. Ludwig Kumplowicz argues that sociology existed long before the 19th century, and that Ibn Khaldun was a sociologist not only before August Comte, but also before Giambattista Vico, a figure some Italians have tried to promote as the first sociologist. So again, the idea of precursor, the pioneer. Nathaniel Schmidt argues that Ibn Khaldun was a sociologist besides being a historian and a philosopher of history. He has obviously hit upon the same trail later followed by Bodin, Montesquieu, and so many others down to Buckle, Spencer, and Ratzel. So you see that these people all agree that Ibn Khaldun is the precursor, forerunner of modern social sciences. He cannot be considered part of the Islamic intellectual tradition. He has no predecessors and no successors. And similarly, like Sati al-Husri, Fuad Köprülü, Zeki Velidi Ugan, these are all I mean, Muslim, Turkish, Arab, people, scholars who adopted this view. They borrowed from Orientalists. They argued that Ibn Khaldun should be seen as the founder of sociology, forerunner, precursor of sociology. Fahri Fındıkoğlu, he's a Turkish sociologist. He argued that Ibn Khaldun adopted free thinking in the 14th century when the West was in the darkness of scholasticism, and he developed a methodological mind that appeared in the West only in the 18th and 19th centuries. U.S. Lacoste wrote that Thucydides invented history, but Ibn Khaldun turned it into a science. And Bernard Lewis argued that Ibn Khaldun was the greatest historical genius of Islam and the first to produce a philosophic and sociological conception of history. Rosenthal, Ayat, Togan, Ümit Hassan, they all argue that although Ibn Khaldun himself was a devoted Muslim, a practicing Muslim, an observing Muslim, a Maliki judge, he was able to separate religion from the world. So he adopted a secular approach in his work. Given that Islamic culture was far away from producing such a great mind, there remains only one possible explanation. Ibn Khaldun was able to transcend his time and culture, transcend Islam. This is what they mean. As such, he has to be credited as a modern thinker. So these are all respected, scholars around the world, and this is how they introduce Ibn Khaldun. So they compare Ibn Khaldun with many great figures from the West, such as Machiavelli, Hobbes, Locke, Bodin, Vico, Montesquieu, Herder, Hegel, Marx, Durkheim, Weber, Sartre, and Heidegger. So they compare Ibn Khaldun with these people and argue that he's as great as these people. But what's wrong with this praise? These people, they are praising Ibn Khaldun, so what's wrong with it? What's wrong is that in Arabic, there is a saying, ذَمٌ يُشْبِهُ الْمَدِحِ, a critique, a blame, which apparently looks like a praise on the surface. So saying that Ibn Khaldun is the forerunner, it looks like a praise, but in reality, it's not a praise. It is turning him into an inactive actor, putting him in a museum and turning it into an antique, a precious antique, which was good once upon a time, but today he's no longer useful. So all these praises turn him into an historical object, an interest of historians, a subject of historical research, but not somebody who can offer any useful idea, theory, concept to us. So that's why I argue that Ibn Khaldun is not a precursor. He is the alternative. He is the alternative. Why? Because he has a different paradigm, and he cannot be considered as the forerunner of the materialist or idealist sociologist. And in order to understand this, you have to understand the ontology and epistemology and the methodology Ibn Khaldun used in his works. So today, this is a rising trend to see Ibn Khaldun as an alternative to modern and postmodern Eurocentric and materialist social sciences. And people like Taha Abdurrahman, Farid Al-Attas, and many others, they support this idea. Actually, we have established in 2006 an international society. It's called International Ibn Khaldun Society. It's a virtual society, and we organize every 2-3 years a symposium where we demonstrate applied Khaldunism. People who attend these symposiums, they are asked to use one of Ibn Khaldun's theories or methods to shed light, to analyze contemporary issues from Ibn Khaldun's perspective. So our method is applied Khaldunism in those symposiums, and we believe that applying Ibn Khaldun while studying contemporary questions, issues in economy, politics, education, religion, culture, civilization, this is the best way to demonstrate that he is the alternative. He is not the precursor of modern social sciences. So why is Ibn Khaldun an alternative but not predecessor? Because the paradigm Ibn Khaldun uses is completely different than the paradigm of those people who founded sociology. So Ibn Khaldun's ontological and epistemological ideas are very different from the positivist social sciences. Why? Because he adopts the multiplex worldview, and the positivists, they are materialist. So this is the most important difference. And Ibn Khaldun accepts wahi as a source of knowledge, and those positivists, they don't accept wahi as a source of knowledge. So you see, his ontology is different, his epistemology is different. So his study is underpinned by axioms and principles which stand in stark contrast with those of the modern social scientists, such as those pertaining to human nature and the meaning of life on Earth. So in all these areas, he has a very different perspective. So how can somebody who accepts the multiplex ontology be a forerunner for materialist thinkers and scholars? I mean, so like Durkheim, Marx, these are materialist people. August Comte is a materialist person. How can somebody like Ibn Khaldun, who believes in Alam al-Ghaib, who accepts wahi as a source of knowledge, be a forerunner of somebody who's godless, materialist, rejects divine revelation as a source of knowledge, doesn't accept existence of God and the metaphysical world? So how can someone like Ibn Khaldun be a forerunner for such people? So Ibn Khaldun is one of the leading representatives of multiplexity, but today people misread Ibn Khaldun, and for some people he is a representative of positivism. For some people, he is a representative of empiricism. For some, rationalism. For some, historicism. For some, he's just a Muslim scholar. All these judgments about Ibn Khaldun are both true and false. How come they are both true and false? The truth about them is that Ibn Khaldun's work has similarities to each one of these diverse approaches. So he has similarity with positivists, he has similarity with empiricists, he has similarity with rationalists, he has similarity with historicists. Okay, so he has similarity with them because in his theory and method, but you cannot say that he's an empiricist. But you can say his work is empirical. So the mistake of those people who label Ibn Khaldun like that, Ibn Khaldun's work cannot be reduced to the scope of either one of these approaches. And a good example is that he's an empirical scholar, but not empiricist. He's a rational scholar, but he's not rationalist. He takes history into account, but he's not a historicist. So a broader reading of Muqaddimah provides better insight into the ontological and epistemological framework in which Ibn Khaldun's Science of Society Ilm Umran fits. And this reading shows us that Ibn Khaldun was neither positivist, empiricist, nor rationalist or historicist. His work is grounded upon another alternative paradigm, which is multiplexity. So why paradigm matters? Why should we care about the paradigms people use? Why should we care about the paradigms of those academics and scholars? Because without taking the paradigm, the ontology, epistemology, and methodology into account, your comparison becomes superficial. It's a superficial comparison. So, and you disregard these paradigmatic foundations, find some superficial similarity, then you label Ibn Khaldun according to that. This is not the proper way of reading and understanding Ibn Khaldun. So ontology, epistemology, and methodology linked together form a research paradigm. So ontology, epistemology, and methodology, these are the three components of a research paradigm. So every science operates within the paradigm that takes a stand on ontology, epistemology, and methodology. This is what Thomas Kuhn argues, and I completely agree with him. So there is no science, who doesn't have a paradigm concerning ontology, epistemology, and methodology. Every social theory is underpinned by a paradigm. However, the underlying assumptions behind the theories and methods are not usually exposed. That's why people are not aware that every science, every scientific theory is grounded on a paradigm. These pre-commitments are about three major domains: ontology, concerning the nature of reality; epistemology, concerning the nature of knowledge and its sources; and methodology, concerning the methods to be used. And this picture here shows that there are two levels when it comes to knowledge and theory. So the philosophical underpinnings of theories and methods, they are about methodology, epistemology, and ontology, but this is usually kept hidden, tacit, implicit, and it's taken for granted. But methods and theories, they are visible. But you cannot understand any theory or method without paying attention to the philosophical underpinnings, paradigmatic foundations of those theories and methods. So Ibn Khaldun's paradigm is multiplex, and this lecture series aims to demonstrate that Ibn Khaldun's ontology, epistemology, and methodology is grounded on multiplex perspective. So this distinction between uniplex and multiplex perspectives is a new classification of social research paradigms. By uniplex paradigm, I mean a uniplex ontology, epistemology, and methodology. And uniplex here means unilayered, single layered. So these uniplex theories, they have a single layer understanding of existence. They're like either materialist, argue everything is material, or idealist. They argue that everything is about ideas, and also intuitivism. But a multiplex paradigm is, on the other hand, comprised of multiplex ontology, epistemology, and methodology, in addition to multiplex conceptions of truth, norm, and meaning. So sometimes it's called multiplexity, sometimes people refer to it as integralism, and sometimes people refer to it as critical realism. So Multiplexity is the translation of Arabic term maratib, which literally means hierarchy or levels. So maratib al-wujud means levels of existence, maratib al-ulum means levels of knowledge, and maratib al-usul means levels of method. Multiplexity typically characterizes the Islamic worldview in at least one aspect. It provides a multi-layered understanding of reality, knowledge, and truth. So multiplexity is needed if you want to build an alternative social science. So multiplexity as a research paradigm has three philosophical components: multiplex ontology, in Arabic maratib al-wujud, multiplex epistemology, in Arabic maratib al-ulum, and multiplex methodology, in Arabic maratib al-usul. And these philosophical foundations branch out into multiplex conceptions of maratib al-ma'ani, which is multiplex meaning, and maratib al-ahkam, multiplex normativity, and maratib al-haqa'iq, multiplex truth. Of course, there is like so much detail about these issues, but I'm not going to go into details of it, and some of it I discussed in my previous lectures. So multiplexity or the multiplex approach is an alternative worldview to the now hegemonic reductionist perspectives. Their approach to existence, knowledge, truth, and norms are uniplex. Whether they are positivist or idealist, they have this uniplex perspective. So paradigms underlay social theory. Social theory constitutes the basis of social sciences. So paradigm, social theory, social science. So different paradigms lead to different social theories, which lead to different social sciences. So for instance, Comte tried to produce a naturalist social science, and this was based on positivist paradigm and social theories. And Dilthey tried to produce an idealist social science, Geisteswissenschaften. So it was grounded on idealist or interpretivist paradigm and social theories. And Ibn Khaldun tried to build ilm umran and fiqh, and his ilm umran was grounded on multiplex paradigm and multiplex social theories. Does the discipline of Umran have anything to offer to the current discussions today? Ibn Khaldun's approach may help us in solving some of the major problems we face today in the social sciences caused by the hegemonic paradigms. These problems may be listed as follows: the claim that there is only one civilization in the world and some societies are not part of civilization. Humanity evolved in a linear way until it reached to the present Western society. So the idea of progress, Ibn Khaldun helps us to go beyond this, and the idea of the single civilization in the world. Ibn Khaldun helps us to go beyond this one also. An exclusive materialist and technological approach to societies and civilization. So Ibn Khaldun's approach is more comprehensive because he takes into account cultural, social aspects of civilization as well, and also uniplexity, ontology, epistemology, and methodology, and the perceived dichotomies between material and cultural causes, as well as the macro and the micro levels of analysis. So Ibn Khaldun offers us alternative perspectives, especially in these three areas. That's why his Ilm Umran is very important, and the perspective of Ilm Umran is multiplexity. So inshallah, in this lecture series, like I will be talking on different aspects of Ibn Khaldun's work. Our next meeting, I will be talking about Ibn Khaldun on existence, multiplex ontology, how he used it. And then next, I will be talking about multiplex epistemology, Ibn Khaldun's approach to knowledge. Then I'll be talking about Ibn Khaldun on methods. And I will talk about multiplex methodology and how Ibn Khaldun used it. Then I will talk about Ibn Khaldun on multiplex human ontology and action, because this is important theory of action and the theory of human ontology. What's a human being? What's a human action? So this is practical. Then I will talk about cyclical history concept of Ibn Khaldun, rise and fall of civilizations, and then the rise again after falling. And eventually, I will conclude by talking about Ibn Khaldun on good governance, circle of justice, or circle of politics. So this is the outline of the 7 lectures we are going to have, inshallah ta'ala, in the future. I stop here, inshallah ta'ala, and if you have any questions, we can continue with them.
Thank you very much, Professor Şentürk. That was an excellent introduction to Ibn Khaldun, and I'm sure there's lots of questions that have come to mind from our audience today. I would like to now bring in everybody to participate with their comments and questions to Professor Şentürk, and also what you thought today's lecture gave you in terms of idea. I think the series will obviously elaborate in detail about his work. So this is just an introduction to him as a person, and in a way putting him in the context of who owns Ibn Khaldun. I would say that was probably another title that could, because is the Muslim world or the multiplex thinking saying, look, Ibn Khaldun belongs to us, as opposed to the uniplex thought. So I'm going to open the floor. Please raise your hand. I'll be happy to, and then I'll sort of call your name out. And if you wish to not speak, you can leave a comment in the comment box or a question in the comment box, and I'll endeavor to actually read your question out or your comment out for everybody's benefit. So and this is lecture is, as I said, 30 to 45 minutes, where we have another 30 to 45 minutes depending on the appetite of our audience today and participants. Any questions? So yes, please feel free to raise your hands and any comments on this issue. So was that, whose hand was that briefly? Oh yes, Naeem, if you want to start off, just yeah, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Professor. Brilliant topic and the lecture as well. I wonder if there is enough resources to study about Ibn Khaldun in English. I understand that there could be a lot of resources in Arabic and in Turkish as well. But how do we go by understanding and reading about Ibn Khaldun? How do you suggest we go forward?
Yes, first of all, Ibn Khaldun's Mukaddime is translated to English. It's available. So you can get his translation, and read it in English. It's by Rosenthal, like 3 volumes. But then there is also an abridged copy of Mukaddime. It's printed by Princeton University Press, and Bruce Lawrence prepared it. So you can either get the short version, the abridged copy by Rosenthal, which is edited by Bruce Lawrence, or the whole thing, which is 3 volumes. And I mean, the whole thing, 3 volumes, I think is out of print now, but you can find the PDF of it. And his book on Shifa'ul Alil, it is also translated to English. So this is also available. You can find it as well. So these two books are translated to English by Ibn Khaldun, and you can get them and read them. Also, there are lots of secondary literature on Ibn Khaldun, but as I have demonstrated, you know, they missed the target because they don't have this perspective of multiplex perspective to Ibn Khaldun. They frame Ibn Khaldun you know, based on their favorite approach. So some say he's materialist, some say he's empiricist, some say he's idealist, some say he's nationalist, you know, some say he's functionalist. So like each one wants to hijack his thought and appropriate to his school of thought and use him as a support to justify and legitimize their approach in social sciences. So multiplexity helps us to properly understand Ibn Khaldun. It's a new perspective to interpret and better understand Ibn Khaldun. That's why I cannot recommend this secondary literature. It may be misleading if you go and read them. Then you may end up thinking he's like the first Marxist, he's the first August Comte, you know. So you may get, you know, get going into wrong direction.
Good.
Thank you. A follow-up question, though, Dr. Ali.
Okay.
The social science is so vast at the moment, Professor. You know that there are so many branches.
Yeah.
Now, with regard to Ibn Khaldun, do you think there is enough research and study on that part of Ibn Khaldun to accommodate and you know, supplement the, you know, Western academic social science that we have? So is there enough resources, or there are more researches needed on Ibn Khaldun to address those areas of social science?
Yes, always, you know, research is needed, but based on proper understanding of Ibn Khaldun, not like, you know, reductionist misinterpretations of Ibn Khaldun. A proper understanding of Ibn Khaldun, you know, will be very helpful in those areas, because Muqaddimah is a multidisciplinary book. There is economy, there is politics, there is education, there is religion, there is civilization, there is history, there is anthropology. I mean, like, it's very helpful in understanding, like, in all these fields and areas. But I believe a proper understanding is needed from the perspective of multiplex ontology, epistemology, and methodology. You know, there are many economists like studying Ibn Khaldun or anthropologists, sociologists, but because of their reductionist preconceived notions, they think he is also a reductionist materialist or idealist or rationalist or empiricist, because they themselves are reductionist, and they reflect retrospectively their narrow-minded reductionist understanding to Ibn Khaldun.
Yeah.
Of course, this is still like useful to a certain extent if they take an idea from Ibn Khaldun and implement it, and there are many examples of it, and which we will be discussing in the future. But inshallah, you know, as we do at International Ibn Khaldun Society in our symposiums, a proper understanding will help us better understand, better apply, you know, Ibn Khaldun to today's questions. And when we say applied Khaldunism, it has two meanings: applied in research, applied in policy making. So applying Ibn Khaldun in policy making is also very important.
So, yeah, thank you, Naeem, for that. Just a question, I think a follow-on from that by Abdul Malik in the comment section. Is there a need for a translation of Muqaddimah by Muslim scholars, since Rosenthal seems to have misunderstood Ibn Khaldun? So what would you say to that, Professor Şentürk?
Yes, there is a very, very urgent need for a proper translation of Ibn Khaldun, which takes into account the fact that he is a multiplex scholar. I mean, as we said, like those like readings, this reductionist readings, they are partially true. They touch only one dimension of Ibn Khaldun, and they try to reduce everything to this single dimension. It's like the story of elephant in Rumi. Like people touch one part of elephant and they think, oh, this is the elephant. So multiplexity is like light, brought in this dark room. Then you see the whole elephant. So this is important, I believe, that somebody makes a good translation of Ibn Khaldun from this perspective, then people will be able to better understand Ibn Khaldun.
By any chance, you're not doing that yourself, are you?
Actually, I intended to translate Ibn Khaldun, but I mean, the scholars I have consulted, they said, rather than translating, try to bring his ideas and write like new theories.
Sure.
Yes.
That's a very good advice you have as well. Yeah. So maybe somebody can do the other side as well. Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I have another hand up, Samata, who has a question.
Yeah, please. Thank you so much for the lecture, Doctor. So I've got two brief questions. The first one sort of to do with Kitab al-Ibar. Sort of, I know the focus of the discussion was to do with the Muqaddimah, but is there sort of information lost on sort of the rest of, because obviously the Muqaddimah being the introduction only, why is there no discourse on the rest of the book if this was just the introductory part? I don't know if you covered that part, but the second question is, so you sort of specifically spoke about the Ibn Khaldun's theories being used as a paradigm. Do you think, because of course everyone's theory sort of has some holes in it and not complete, what would need to be added on if we only use Ibn Khaldun's theories as sort of the main paradigm to analyze, I guess, like in a country or economy or history? What would sort of be needed to add on, if that makes sense?
Yes, this is a very important question. I mean, our goal is not to like replicate Ibn Khaldun as it is, because I mean, the practical conditions changed in the world. So what can Ibn Khaldun help us is to analyze the structure, the system, the order of things in history, economy, politics, etc. So, this is what I call rooted revival. Rooted revival. So get the roots, from Ibn Khaldun, and you build the rest upon it. Newton was asked, how come you see the things we cannot see? He replied, he said, because I stand on the shoulder of giants. So we need to stand on the shoulder of giants like Ibn Khaldun to make contribution, to take him further, and to implement it to today's cases, questions, and problems. So this is very much needed. And the Muqaddimah is not like a sacred book, so it's a theoretical book. That's why it draws like more attention, because people are those people who are interested in the theory and method, they read Muqaddimah. Those who are interested in the historical information, they read the rest of the book. But most people are not really interested in reading the history of the Abbasids and Umayyads and the history of the Berbers, etc. They are more interested in his theoretical, methodological views. That's why Mukaddime, the introduction, is more popular than the book itself.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Was there a follow-up, Samatar? Or?
No, that's I've answered my question perfectly and I've digested that. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you. I think Professor Iftikhar Malik made a comment in our section, and he's also raised his hand. Maybe he wants to maybe bring both of those issues together. If I could ask Iftikhar Malik just to unmute yourself, please, and feel free to ask your question. Thank you.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. Professor Şentürk, I don't believe in uncritiqued adulation of modernity, but I'm also slightly skeptical of over-romanticization of tribalism or tribal origins of civilization as per Ibn Khaldun. So to me, these sort of appear to be two poles apart. And I think that we need a third option, a way out of this kind of cul-de-sac, this blind alley, because we Muslims are stuck. I mean, there are Muslims who feel that modernity is the way forward. It's not the Westerners, the Europeans only, who are saying modernity is the way forward to a unilinear civilization. There are some Muslims who also believe in it, and most of them have been the architects of 57 Muslim states that we got. And then there are lots of Muslims who are reacting to it and who are rejecting modernity and all the modernist prerogatives, and they think the way forward is by going back. And I think that is a kind of catch-22 situation. So I'm deeply worried that we are between these two extremes. Don't you think we need to find a syncretic, a synthetic kind of way forward so that we get out of this blind alley that we are stuck in over the last 100, 150 years? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, but the question you raised is not related, with our discussion here, because I'm not talking about modernity versus Islam. I'm talking about like two different, approaches in social sciences. One is the Uniplex approach, whether represented by Muslims or non-Muslims, and then the Multiplex approach. So these are two different approaches, in social sciences. And I have never mentioned like modernity versus Islam or anything, and I did not make any critique of modernity. So I mean, because I'm against that kind of generalized approach, because there are many types of people in modernity. I mean, modern thinkers. So what I am exposing here is the ontology, epistemology, and methodology. Some social scientists adopt, and I criticize this perspective, and I say Ibn Khaldun is an embodiment of multiplex paradigm. So I'm not saying like let's go back to Middle Ages or anything. I'm just saying this paradigm, which is about multiplex understanding of the existence, knowledge, and method, and also calling Ibn Khaldun tribal idealization means complete misunderstanding of Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Khaldun is not tribalist. He does not idealize tribalism, so he analyzes like what brings people together, and he uses the example of a tribe. Okay, so today you can use like a football fans supporting one particular football team, or political parties. So the question he's raising is what brings people together, what unifies them, what glues them together. This is what he's exploring, and using the example of tribe. He's not tribalist or anything. He's not idealizing tribalism. Actually, on the contrary, he's idealizing the urban life, not the tribal life. And this has nothing to do like being against modernity or anything. It's a different kind of discussion. And I mean, and the multiplexity does not mean completely like rejecting like positivism or rationalism or empiricism. As I have mentioned, these are reflections of one particular dimension of Ibn Khaldun's approach. It's not the holistic, comprehensive approach, because Ibn Khaldun is empirical but not empiricist. Ibn Khaldun is rational but not rationalist. When you say rationalist, it means somebody who argues that I can know everything using my reason. But Muslim scholars, and in particular Ibn Khaldun, he uses his reason, but within the proper domain. He doesn't say, I can know everything using my reason. And they are empirical scholars, but they never argue that I can know everything through empirical methods. So, I mean, we are empirical, but not empiricist. We are rational, but we are not rationalist. We also accept divine revelation as one of the sources of knowledge. So this is multiplex epistemology, and it's grounded on multiplex ontology, which accepts that there are multiple levels of existence. So Ibn Khaldun accepts that there is like ideal world, but he's not idealist, because idealist means reducing the whole existence into ideal level of existence. So he accepts there's material level of existence, but he's not materialist, because he subscribes to this multiplex worldview, that we accept there is material level of existence, there is ideal level of existence, and there is divine level of existence. So inshallah, we will be discussing these things in great detail in our upcoming lectures.
I think, Professor Şentürk, thank you. I think on that point, I would encourage those who are new to Professor Şentürk's lectures, first time joined, I would strongly recommend that you visit the YouTube of Kames, where he has previously delivered this series on multiplexity and Islam as an open civilization. You would strongly recommend you look into that, or just follow those, and you'll get a greater appreciation of the angle by which hopefully Ibn Khaldun is placed in that multiplex context of discussion. So I think strongly recommend you visit some of those previous lectures. And it makes sense to me what you have said, Professor Şentürk, in this situation, because I have joined you previously with your previous lectures. I had a sort of a simple question for you in terms of just you mentioned at the beginning Ibn Khaldun is not really a solitary figure in the world of, especially from the Muslim world, in terms of being a multiplex scholar, or a scholar who looked at it in the various dimensions that you actually laid out for us. Who do you think amongst that come close to his type of work? Because it is obviously Ibn Khaldun is the one that everybody knows, both the West and the East. And as you said, either romanticized by some, and others put him in the museum of, I don't know, Egyptian antiquities. But who do you say amongst the Muslim world historically has come close to that kind of thinking from your work that you've done?
First of all, as I have mentioned, Ibn Khaldun belongs to Ahl Sunnah school. And within the Ahl Sunnah school, like he belongs to Maliki fiqh school. So like everybody in the Maliki, chain, they are his predecessors. And then like the Maliki scholars who lived after him, these are his successors, right? So he also belonged to the Ash'ari school of thought in philosophy, in Kalam. So all the Ash'ari scholars before him, these are his predecessors. And then those Ash'aris who came after him, these are his successors, and also he belonged to this Sufi school. So the Sufis before him, these are his predecessors, and the Sufis after him, these are his successors. And there's a good translation of Shifa'ul Alil by Yumni Özer. So people can get it and read it. And Rosenthal's translation is also, very helpful. Of course, there are some mistakes, but ma la yudraku kulluhu la yutraku kulluhu. So, whatever you get, it's better than nothing. Yeah. So it will be very helpful to read these translations, inshallah ta'ala. And regarding the social analysis, historical analysis, when you read the introduction of Muqaddimah, he talks about his the historians who are his predecessors. He talks about them, he mentions them. And in particular, Farabi is very important. Farabi is the first person who wrote about al-ilm al-madani. So it means science of civilization. And Ibn Khaldun acknowledges this in the beginning of his Muqaddimah. He says that al-hukama, the philosophers like Farabi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, they call civilization al-madaniyat. And he said al-fuqaha and al-mutakallimun, they call it al-ijtima' al-insani, al-ijtima' al-bashari, human society. And he says, I call it umran. So there are three terms, like one used by the philosophers who studied civilization. The other is used by fiqh scholars and kalam scholars. And then he himself came up with this word umran. And so closest to Ibn Khaldun is Ibn al-Azraq. Ibn al-Azraq and Mawardi, these are very close to Ibn Khaldun. But also there are like Ottoman Khaldunians. They adopted Ibn Khaldun as their mentor, and they applied Ibn Khaldun while they analyzed issues and problems in the Ottoman society, politics, economics, etc. And inshallah, in the future, I will share the list of those people, but the most important one is Ahmed Cevdet Pasha and Pirizadeh and Kınalızadeh, and there are like many other great, like Sheikhul Islam, great scholars. And actually, Muqaddimah was translated for the first time to Turkish language. In 18th century, Sheikhul Islam Pirizadeh translated Muqaddimah to Turkish, but he finished only half of it. And then later, Ahmed Cevdet Pasha, who is the author of the famous Al-Majalla, the first codification of Islamic law. So he translated the rest, and then it was printed several times by the print house, in the Ottoman Empire. So there is this Ottoman Khaldunism, as a tradition. But unfortunately, when we adopted Western sociology, like Durkheimian positivist sociological tradition, so it became official. Part of the official education, in the universities and high schools. So Ibn Khaldun was kind of sidelined, but continued in Turkey. And there is a famous Turkish intellectual and thinker, Cemil Meriç. He argues that sociology is the secular theology of the West. Sociology is the secular theology of the West. Actually, this is very true because August Comte said sociology is, a religion of humanity. He himself, made this argument, and he said, Cemil Meriç said, we have to turn to ourselves, and turning to ourselves means turning to Ibn Khaldun. Then interest, to revive Ibn Khaldun's tradition, gain more and more popularity, and people are aware that we cannot simply copy and paste Ibn Khaldun to today, but we can get basic ideas, fundamental principles, the paradigm. That's why paradigm is important. We can get the paradigm and implement it, to today's problems, because as I have mentioned in my lecture, the practical conditions have changed. Like we went through industrial revolution, we went through like a knowledge society. Now we are going through digital revolution, but society is the same. I mean, we have to analyze like what brings people together. So today, one of the very important issue in sociology is cohesion, social cohesion. What brings people together? And there's a big problem now in modern society or postmodern society that people are lonely. They don't know how to unite, get together. And in UK, you know better than me that there is Ministry of Loneliness. So we need Ibn Khaldun to analyze what brings people together, what causes fragmentation of society, and how can we strengthen the cohesion, social cohesion in society. And Ibn Khaldun uses tribe as an example, when he analyzes what brings people together and then what causes fragmentation, because the tribal spirit is very strong in the beginning of civilization, but later when they gain power and prosperity, they lose tribal spirit and they became individualistic. So we will discuss these things in the future, in greater detail.
That's a very interesting point you make, actually, and I'm looking forward to that, because it's a daily battle I have with patients and the loneliness that they face, and I just cannot fathom why our society in the UK has turned, become like that. It's really difficult one to actually explain, but
read Ibn Khaldun, you'll better understand British society, why they became lonely. He has a good theory to explain.
I will do. No,
and we will discuss this in the future, or just follow up until the end.
No, that's it. I've got my answers to my patients in your lectures. That's great, actually. Just as a quick note, there's one other question that is asked from the on our messaging board. Just everyone, there's a couple of links there for you. Islam as an Openness Civilization, Decolonization of Social Science. The YouTube channels has those lectures, so you can find the links to those. And also join our WhatsApp lecture group for the recording and slides, especially for this series as well. And the links are there on the chat group. One question asked by Abdul Malik earlier on, it was, is Tasawwuf, sorry, just get this question, is Tasawwuf central to Ibn Khaldun's thought? I think you touched on it.
Yes, this is a good question. I mean, there are multiple centers in multiplexity. There is no single center. That's the unique aspect of multiplex structure. In the multiplex structure, there is no single center. There are many centers. It's multi-center. It's polycentric. It's polycentric. So like we don't have Vatican as a single center. We have Cairo, we have Damascus, we have Istanbul. Similar to this in our thinking, like as I have mentioned earlier, I mean, Ibn Khaldun is a rationalist jurist, key rationalist. You know, when he writes fiqh book, he uses this rational usul fiqh perspective. And also he's a rationalist mutakallim. When he talks about rational theology, he's complete rationalist. And he has a book on logic, complete rationalist. You know, but he has a book on tasawwuf also. So tasawwuf is one layer, is one dimension of his thinking. So when we say he's Sufi, it doesn't mean, you know, like he abandons rationality, he abandons empiricism, he abandons rational methods. Actually, all our scholars are like this. You know, they accept that, you know, empiric knowledge is very important, but it has limits. Rational knowledge is important, but it has limits. I mean, wahi is important, but it has limits. Tasawwuf is important, but it has limits. When you operationalize all of them together, then you have a multiplex system, which is very holistic, which is very comprehensive, and it helps you to use and mobilize all your intellectual, spiritual, sensual muscles. But simply focusing on tasawwuf and neglecting rational empirical methods, this is anti-Islamic. You know, this is against our tradition. So like Imam Ghazali, he was a Sufi, but at the same time, he was a rationalist philosopher. You know, he wrote philosophy book, and he wrote books on logic, completely rational, you know, and he wrote books on fiqh, you know, and kalam. So inshallah, we will discuss these things in the future as well in greater detail. So they used multiple methods. They navigated through multiple levels of existence and through multiple levels of knowledge. This is what makes multiplex perspective comprehensive, holistic, and superior to reductionist materialist perspectives, to reductionist empiricist perspectives. So this multiplexity, on the one hand, incorporates the insights of those materialists. We are as materialist as those materialists, but we are not reductionists. You know, we don't say everything is material, you know, but we accept the material reality and we use empirical methods to study material reality. But we are not materialists. We don't say everything is material, there is nothing else. But at the same time, we are idealists, as idealists, those idealists, but we are not the reductionists. We accept there is metaphysical world, there is spirituality, but we don't say everything is spirituality. We accept there is body, you know, and the needs of the body, you know. So they are reductionist, you know, but we have this balanced view that brings things together in a comprehensive and holistic manner. So Ibn Khaldun is a Sufi, and Sufism is very important for him, but it's not everything. It's just one level of his being, his scholarship, and his practice.
Brilliant. Thank you, Professor Şentürk. I think we are literally on the 7:30, just past 7:30, our allocated time for this session, both from the lecture and question and answers, unless there's burning questions. Again, it was an introduction today. We have 6 more lectures. Hopefully we'll be able to go into in a lot more granular detail of the whole topic of Ibn Khaldun and his thinking. So I'm hoping, and this in a way is an appetizer for us to go away, do some reading around the topic, because a lot of these things require time to digest, time to reflect, and can't be done in a rushed fashion. So I definitely would like to encourage that. There's one request there, and maybe a little sort of your artistic side Professor Şentürk, that can be drawn out for next time. Aisha Said has asked, how would a visual or graphic representation of a polycentric multiplex structures of Ibn Khaldun look like in a diagram? So I'm going to leave that to you, maybe to bring it as a diagram for us next time when you join us. Yeah.
So this should be a homework for everyone.
Shall we give it as a task for everybody?
Those who have like artistic skills, they can use it.
Why not? Let's see.
I also have my own. We have like with my assistants, we have designed the visual, visual representations of these ideas, which we will be sharing in the future also. But I shall say it, and those our other friends who has this skills, I mean, if they also come up with visual representations, this will be good, inshallah, and I can even incorporate them in the future in my slides.
That's a very good idea.
Professor is not a reductionist. He's accommodating to
accommodating everybody.
I have open civilization.
Yeah, that's right. Very much. He lives it and talks it and breathes it, as they say. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, everyone. I would like to thank Professor Şentürk for his presentation today and taking the question and answer session and going into detail with his answers in all of these, and there's many more to come. And I also thank our participants and those who asked questions and made comments for joining today and making this a very interesting session overall. The next lecture will be on Tuesday, the 21st of February, on the topic of Ibn Khaldun on existence, multiplexity, multiplex ontology. So that's the topic. I shall join you from another part of the world at that time, hopefully. So looking forward to that. And so without further ado, I would like to take leave and close this session, bring this session to a close. And our thoughts and prayers again with the people of Turkey and Syria, and please remember them in your du'as and help in whatever way you can. And this is really where humanity comes together and shows, regardless of your background, we need to do our part. And I'd like to end the session tonight. Thank you very much.